But most of the issues that face California in this remainder of this century have absolutely nothing to do with Donald Trump. And I wrote a column recently, which actually hasn't been published yet, kind of laying out all the things that California needs to address, and where the candidates, particularly the candidates for governor, need to address next year that have nothing in the world to do with Donald Trump. And I'm going to share a few of those with you today, because I think they're very serious issues. It's the sort of thing that's going to make or break California and its economy in the years ahead. And, you know, I could probably list 6 or 8 or 9, but I'm going to talk about 2 or 3 of those other than healthcare. And right at the top of that list of issues facing California is housing, or rather the lack thereof. Let me throw a few numbers at you about housing in California. Our population grows. Actually, we have very moderate population growth, even what you might call low population growth in California these days. We think of California as being a state that's growing very rapidly all the time, so everybody's moving here. Well, that was true, I suppose, at one time, and it was true pretty much up through the 1980s. But since then, since 1990, we have seen a very dramatic lowering of the growth rate in California. At the moment, we're growing at the rate of about 0.7% a year. Now, we start out, we've got 39 million people, so 0.7% a year. You can do the arithmetic. It works out to about 300,000 new Californians every year. And by the way, most of those are babies, or the excess of more babies than people who die. And that's our basic population growth generator today. We don't have a lot of people coming to California anymore. We actually lose more people to other states than we gain these days. Texas is the #1 favored destination of ex-Californians, by the way. So we gain about 300,000 a year. The average household size in California is just under 3 persons. So do the arithmetic. You need 100,000 new units of housing every year in California net. Now, we were down to maybe 20 or 30,000 a year back during the Great Recession. We picked up slowly. We're back up to about close to 100,000 new units a year. So you say, oh, what's the problem? We're taking care of our population growth. No, we're not. Because you need a net of 100,000. In fact, the state's own housing department says you need to build 180,000 units, new units of housing every year, because a lot of housing gets burned up, destroyed, abandoned. So to get what you need and also make some headway against the backlog, you need to be building 180,000 new units a year, and right now we're building only slightly over half of that. The result of which is our housing problem gets worse day by day. It gets worse every day. And that has, of course, driven up housing costs to dramatic levels. And that's particularly true in relative terms for people with low and moderate income statuses. They are having a terrific problem finding and affording housing in California today, and it's getting worse. It's getting much worse. The worst problem, by the way, tends to be in the immediate Los Angeles metropolitan area, not because their housing costs are so extraordinarily high, but because their incomes are extraordinarily low. So the housing burden, as people call it, is worse in Southern California than it is anywhere else in the state. And it's a serious issue. It's an issue that could really affect the economic progress of California. It's driving a lot of the young people out of California to places like Texas, where they can find housing, even though the jobs may not be paying quite as much, they can find housing that they can afford. And it exacerbates the already serious problem of income inequality in California, the great disparity between the haves and the have-nots in California. Now, what's the solution to that? Well, the solution is to build more housing. And how do you do that? You make it easier for people to invest in housing. There are also over 100 housing bills kicking around the Capitol today by politicians that we're going to do something about housing. But very, very few of them would truly do something about housing, which is you need to free up in terms of red tape and the housing market Make it easier for people to build. Make it easier to build second units on lots, granny flats. Make it easier all the way along. The governor says that's what you got to do. And he's proposed really a very mild step in that direction, but he can't even get to first base on that. Why? Because there's a lot of resistance to it. People in neighborhoods don't want more housing in their neighborhoods. Environmental groups very often oppose housing projects in a knee-jerk reaction. And even labor unions don't like it because they like to use the red tape of housing to force developers to hire union labor. So it's a serious problem, and one that probably will continue to get worse. And as it does worsen, it will have a negative effect on the California economy. The second big issue that I want to talk about today is education. We're not doing what we need to do in education, either at the lower or the higher education levels. We have too many kids dropping out, not finishing after going into the 9th grade, not finishing high school. We have test scores, academic test scores, that are among the lowest in the country. It's a shameful thing, really. It's a wasteful thing. We need kids to become productive members of society. Our K-12 education system, there are many good examples of it, but overall, in California, we're not really doing what we need to do in K-12 education. We're spending a lot more money. Since Jerry Brown became governor for the second time, the per pupil spending in California has gone up by 50%. That's just 6 years. And in fact, the budget that the governor, the revised budget that the governor unveiled yesterday, would add another couple of $1 billion to K-12 education. Are we spending enough? Well, some people say we're not. But we're certainly spending a lot more than we were a few years ago. But we're not, as yet anyway, getting the results of that spending. We're not seeing an uptick in the kind of, and it's particularly, we're not seeing what the educators call at-risk kids getting better. In fact, the gap between the poor and non-English speaking kids on one end and the more affluent English-speaking kids on the other end, the gap has been widening and not closing, even though we're spending billions of dollars supposedly targeted on those kids. We also have an issue in higher education. Our institutions of higher education are not producing enough college graduates to fill the need that we are projected to have in the decades ahead. Why? Well, the baby boomers are retiring, for one thing. And so we need to replace them. And we also have a rising need for college graduates, particularly in technical fields. And it's an issue. We're short about 1 million a year in terms of college graduates. But it's very difficult to get traction on improving access to higher education. It's a costly business. It's a very costly business. And we have not been willing to expend the kind of money necessary to expand those opportunities. I know that in this area you have a particular lack of opportunity for four-year education, and local education people have been working on it. Keep on plugging. It's a very, very important thing. You need that sort of thing to keep your kids at home, get them educated, provide the kind of trained and educated labor that your economy is going to need here and for the state as a whole. Another issue is traffic or transportation. As you know, the legislature and the governor just passed a bill that raises taxes and fees on transportation by about $5 billion a year to be spent on improving transportation in California. But, there's always a but, right? But almost none of that money will be spent on relieving traffic congestion. Now, when they were trying to get the bill passed, there were all this thing, too much traffic congestion, vote for this bill, tell your legislators to vote for this bill. Well, the dirty little secret was very little of the money is going to be spent on traffic congestion. It's mostly going to be spent on fixing potholes, repairing things down, local transit. It's going to be, in fact, it's going to be addressed to the backlog of unmet maintenance needs. If you haven't noticed, not only do we have the worst traffic congestion in the United States, we also have the second worst roadway conditions, our pavement conditions. If you drive, I've driven in every state in the United States except for Alaska in the last 20 years. And I will tell you by personal experience, you hit the California line, it's a jarring experience. And we have the second worst conditions in the country, according to the federal government. The only state with worse highways in California is New Jersey, where they bury bodies in the road or something like that. But nothing for traffic congestion. Nothing. Virtually nothing. So then that problem gets worse. And I'm going to throw a couple of numbers at you to illustrate the dimensions of what I'm talking about. We Californians drive 330 billion miles a year. That, do the arithmetic. Do the arithmetic. It's almost a billion miles a day. And not only does that beat up the roads, ergo we have bad road conditions, but it also overwhelms a traffic network, a roadway network that was not built to handle that much traffic. Now, what's going to happen in that regard? At the moment, nothing. In fact, the official state roadway plan from the ground administration is that they will not build any new capacity into the roadway system ever. Why? Because they want people to get out of their cars. They want them to start riding bicycles. They want them to get on trolley cars and trains, bullet trains, and that sort of thing. They have enough bullet trains. They have bullet trains. They'll probably never be built. Were it to be built. According to their own data, the state's own, the high-speed rail authority's own data, if you built the entire system, I'm talking about the Sacramento and San Diego, I mean the whole Medina, not just San Francisco, LA, it would reduce automotive traffic by just slightly over 1%. $68 billion. So that's probably not going to happen. Even if we do all this miraculous shifting to electrics and hybrids and hydrogen-powered cars that they keep talking about, that's not happening. They're still cars. And they're still going to be on the road. And there's still going to be traffic congestion. You go to driverless cars, they're still cars. And they're still going to be on the road. That's going to eat us alive at some point. It's one of those things that is corrosive. It eats at the economy. It eats at the willingness of people to commute and to get jobs and everything else. And the next governor, whoever he or she may be, should be dealing with that just as they should be dealing with education and all the other issues that face the state. Now, the final big four, traffic, education. The big one is water. We can't survive without it. I mean, it's the most basic commodity there is. Human beings need water. And the economy needs water. The recent drought and this year's record-breaking rain and snow both illustrate the essence of California's water problem. And that is lack of storage. Water is not a hydrological problem. We actually have, even in drought years, a lot of water in California. Believe it or not. We're not Nevada. We're not Arizona. There's water here. But it's not a hydrological problem. It's not an engineering problem. It's a political problem. It's the unwillingness to pull the trigger and build the kind of facilities that we need to build. We human beings need about 40 million acre-feet of water a year. That's about what we need. About 3/4 of that goes to agriculture, by the way. Non-agriculture needs around, use anyway, about 9 million, something like that. If you would just add a million or two to that supply, it would probably be enough. What's that the equivalent of? Well, Shasta Lake holds 4.5 million. So you need maybe the equivalent of another half of Shasta, something like that. 2 million acre feet. It's not an awful lot, really. There are a lot of reservoirs in California that are that size. Why haven't we done it? We haven't built a seriously new reservoir, at least in Northern California. There's been a couple in Southern California for many, many years. Why? Because the battle over water in California has nothing to do with water. It has to do with land use. All land uses require water of one kind or another. Whether it's a subdivision or a vineyard, it requires water. So how do you control land use? You control the supply of water. Or, more appropriately, more realistically, the lack of water. If there's an uncertain supply of water, then it removes one of the tools that people use to try to affect land use decisions. In fact, there's a state law passed about 15, 20 years ago that embodies that. It says that if you have a major new subdivision, you not only have to prove that you have a supply of water for that subdivision. Not that somebody's just willing to sell you the water, but that you can prove the water is actually going to be there. Well, how do you do that? You can't. Because as long as there's an uncertain water supply, then you really can't do that. So it's all about land use, and it's about the controversies over land use, mostly involving environmental issues. And that's why we really haven't built the kind of water storage in California that we really need. Because as long as there's an uncertain water supply, then that tool exists in the political toolbox. If you have a certain water supply, if you have an adequate supply of water, if everybody has enough water to do what they need to do, then that tool goes away. And that's really why the opposition to developing new storage exists. Now, that said, the drought has kind of changed that a little bit. And what we've seen is that the people who oppose new storage, just as a knee-jerk reaction, are now saying, well, maybe we do need some new storage. And so it's possible, not immediately, not next year, probably not the next decade, that we're going to see some serious water storage being constructed in Northern California. And you all in this area have a very direct stake in that, because as I understand it, you get your water from the state water company. So the ability, the adequacy of the supply that comes down through the system, down the Sacramento River, through the Delta, or under the Delta, tunnels are built, and then into the California Aqueduct and spreading into central and southern California, is very much an issue in how much water storage is available. It is probably, again, if you look at the top 4 issues, 3 or 4 issues facing California, the issues that the next governor after that governor, are going to have to deal with or ignore at their own peril and at the peril of the state. Those are the 4 biggies. There's many others you could mention. The way the state budget is done, the tax system that needs overhauling, all sorts of things. But those are the 4 biggies. The adequate resolution of those 4 issues, water, education, traffic, and housing, will determine whether California continues to be the economic engine for the country that we are now. And if we fail to deal with those issues, if we allow the housing shortage to continue, if we allow too many youngsters to get out of the system without adequate educations, and we don't produce enough college graduates, and we don't do something about traffic congestion, and we continue to ignore our water supply issues, then we're all going to be in peril. We're going to see an even greater outflow of young people to other states, places where they can find housing, where the jobs are available, and so forth. And we're going to see ourselves start to devolve. Now, I mentioned this one thing. You have to think about this. You go back 100 years to 1917, when my mother was only 1 year old. She's 101 now. And you say, where is it happening? Where is it happening in the world? Where is it happening in the United States? You would say it was happening in Detroit. Detroit was the Silicon Valley of its time. It was the place where the smart people went. was the place where the investment capital went. It was building an entire new kind of economic structure. But look what happened to Detroit. It took it for granted. It assumed it would always be there. It didn't nurture, it didn't take care of its basics. It let itself be overwhelmed by leaner and meaner competitors. And that can happen in California. If we don't take care of business, if our politicians get so obsessed with Donald Trump that they just don't want to talk about it or do anything else. If we as voters don't insist that they deal with these pithier issues, in California it could go the way of Detroit. Instead of being a great economic engine, we could find ourselves sputtering and struggling for survival. So this is not just theory. This is reality. Those things, those four issues and a number of others need to be addressed. And we have to hold our politicians accountable for that and not let them get away with just simply mouthing slogans in next year's election. It's going to be a very critical election for that reason. We're going to be electing a lot of new people. A new governor, several other constitutional offices, a new state treasurer, for example, a new insurance commissioner, a new superintendent of public construction. And by the way, the battle over superintendent of public construction may be the best battle next year. But you really have that issue about education I mentioned earlier, about the education of the particular poor kids, is going to be the focus of that campaign. So we're electing a number of new people next year. We can't just let them get away with sloganeering. They have to be held accountable for dealing with the most important issue that California faces as we head on into the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Here we do the Medi-Cal program here in San Obispo County. So now we're switching up a very interesting conversation about water and everything else. We're going to talk a little bit about healthcare. I guess a lot about healthcare. And I have 10 minutes. We're all very nervous about. We only have 10 minutes to do this. I'm doing my best. So a little bit about CenCal Health. We're actually a public entity. We're legally organized, but we basically function as an HMO. We're not like the DMV. We don't guarantee a perpetuity. We can do our job.
Can you speak into the microphone more, please?
How's this?
Yes.
Okay. We've been around since 1983, and we expanded in San Luis Obispo in 2008. And we administer the Medi-Cal program. We have about approximately 180,000 people that we cover in both counties, which is 1 in 4 residents of both Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo County get their health insurance through us. So that's more than you think of when you think of Medi-Cal. Our annual budget's about $675 million, and I think it's very interesting that we nationally, we're very proud of the fact that we rank in the top 10% of Medicaid plans in the nation for quality. And that's not really, we do our part, but what that really speaks to is the quality of physicians and hospitals we have in this area. We don't provide the care, we just arrange for it. So I think we should all be very thankful that the quality of healthcare providers we have. Some quick facts about Medicaid. It is the largest health insurance program in the nation, covering about 90 million people. 3% of the total gross domestic product is for Medicaid. Again, in California, where it's 1 in 4 here, but in California, it's 1 in 3 people are covered by Medi-Cal. Half of babies, every baby, 1 of every 2 babies born in California is on Medi-Cal. The state budget for Medi-Cal is over $100 billion a year. That dwarfs any other state's Medi-Cal expenditures. And I think attitudes, or the attitude about Medi-Cal is the program for the very poor and the destitute, and that's definitely changed. 80% of the Medi-Cal population have jobs. So what I want to talk about is the Medi-Cal expansion. Okay, Medicaid, 49 states in this country call the Medicaid program Medicaid, 1 calls it Medi-Cal. That's California. So when I say Medicaid, I'm referring nationally. When I say Medi-Cal, I'm talking about California. But when we talk about the ACA and all of the stuff that's going on in the news and about repealing it, a lot's been talking about, but we're talking about a lot about the healthcare exchanges, discussion about pre-existing conditions and all of this. That's actually a very small part of the ACA exchange. The big part of the ACA exchange was expanding Medicaid, the eligibility for Medicaid. So right now, there are about 3 million people nationally on the exchanges. 20 million people got their new health coverage through Medicaid. And what it is it expands eligibility from 100% of the federal poverty level to 138%. Without getting into what that means and how it's derived, what that basically means is childless adults with low income are now eligible for Medicaid or Medi-Cal. And one of the things that we found out when we were gearing up for this in 2013, the original projections from UCLA that there would be about 30,000 new Medi-Cal beneficiaries in this two-county area over a 3-year period. So about 10,000 new a year. What happened was we were getting 30,000 within the first year. At one point during 2014, we were getting 3,000, 3,500 new Medi-Cal eligibles every month. And that's people we had to find doctors for and get their materials out for them. And so this is growing a lot faster than anyone really anticipated. And it really says a lot about our physicians. I know Community Health Centers is here. And the physician community to really help us accommodate that expansion of individuals. So right now, since 2014, we've added about 70,000 people. Not all of them are expansion, but what we call is the woodwork effect, which is there is so much outreach that other people that were always eligible for Medi-Cal but never got around to applying for it actually applied. So about 45,000 or Medi-Cal expansion, and the rest are people that are always eligible for the program but just never signed up for it. So the amount of dollars that Medi-Cal expansion has added to the area since 2014 is about $436 million. That's new money into the system that was not here previously. And this is all a good thing because coverage is access, and access is quality, and eventually quality results in cost savings. Now this is just a graph of the reimbursements. Hospitals got 166 million, physicians 129, pharmacy 93, others 47. That's about consistent with what the other population has. What's missing is long-term care. Again, this is a childless adult population between 21 and 64, so they're not going to necessarily use a whole lot of long-term care. But you see the distribution of how the money went out. Now this may be hard to read, but these are the top 10 physician visit diagnosis. And you can see what the people were going to the doctor for. These are the Medi-Cal expansion eligibles. And it's hard for me to read this on this, but hypertension, renal disease. There were some of these were fine, deliveries and so forth, but some of these people were sick. This is a population that had some very, let's say, significant healthcare issues. And this is hospital admissions. This is by number. This is by different admissions. And you see we have infections, deliveries are normal, but you have obesity, you have diabetes, you have some renal failure in it. You have some, again, serious conditions that these people are being treated for, which they did not have health insurance for previously. It's very important. And I think another important part is that doesn't mean if you don't have coverage, you don't get sick. Obviously, you still get sick. And you go to the hospital, then who pays for it? Either the hospital pays for it, or they have to pass it along to all of us through the amounts they charge commercial insurance. So there are significant expenses here that are going to happen one way or the other. Oops, missed it. This is hospital admissions by acuity. So these aren't by visits, but you can see some of these people had very, very serious issues that they were able to have treated because they had insurance and because they had access to care. We had a liver transplant, we had all sorts of things. One person alone cost $2 million. But that money is now being provided. It's not, this person is either not on their own, or they can go through the emergency room, but what about follow-up care? How do you repeating doctor visits, etc. So again, this is not a population that didn't need health care. So what's this all mean? This population is clearly benefited from having regular access to health care. And I think we all benefit from it because, again, these expenses are going to occur one way or the other. And getting these people treated is good for everybody. It's good for them, it's good for us. It's good for the facilities because they get reimbursed. It's a system that is basically going to win-win. Also, let me see, I can't read that. Oh yeah, this is, now I'm going by overall, not just the Medi-Cal population, but not just the Medi-Cal expansion, all of Medi-Cal. Hospital admissions per 1,000 are down and staying down, so that's good. Our generic drug rate is 87%. So of every prescription that's given, 87% is for the generic. And I think most of, if not all of us, know the difference in cost between a generic drug and a brand drug. So if you get 87% generic, that's very good in terms of being efficient. Again, our quality ratings are among the highest in the state, meaning our physicians and hospitals and so forth provide top quality care, which means good outcomes. Emergency department usage is still an issue that we're struggling with. Mr. Work may be touching on that a little bit later, but it's still something, maybe old habits die hard, but we're still trying to get folks to not use the emergency department as their primary point of entry into the delivery system. You have a doctor now. You can go there. It's not as long as you wait. You can call and get an appointment. So another thing is high-cost drugs. They have been very useful clinically in terms of treating diseases that were difficult before. Hep C, they have Sovaldi and Bavardi and others have been great in terms of clinically curing drugs. However, they're very expensive. Sovaldi at one point was $900 a pill, and you needed to take one pill a day for 3 months. And that was a very expensive. At one point in 2014, and we had about 115,000 members at the time, 43 individuals accounted for 20% of our monthly drug spend. Think about that. And that was all because of Sovaldi, the high-cost drug. So high-cost drugs are something, and this affects everybody. It's not just Medi-Cal. They're great clinically, but the prices are untenable for us to maintain. So what's next for us in terms of healthcare? Where we go from here? I think one of the big things is further integration of mental health and physical health. A lot of the people that have a lot of physical health issues also have mental health issues, and you need to treat them both to really get them going and on the road to recovery. Stable housing for the homeless. I know it's not a direct correlation, but it is, because if they have direct stable housing, they can save lives, and that affects their health care. Consistent nutrition and social interaction with seniors. We do a lot with the senior nutrition programs in both counties, because if you can subsidize low-income seniors in their nutrition, they get regular meals, they have social interaction, they maintain their independence, all of these things where they keep them out of skilled nursing. It's a very affordable way of keeping the individual independent as long as they can be, which is what they want. It keeps them out of skilled nursing, which is what we as the people that pay for it want. And so there are ways for us to look at these broader in the social indications of health to really make some progress. And recuperative care for the ED frequent flyers, identify the high costs, help them with housing or with behavioral health or whatever they need to break that cycle of just coming back and coming back and coming back. So, conclusion is that I think in terms of this population, it's never been better in terms of access to care, quality of care that's being provided. And I think this is something that's very unique. I have a lot of colleagues throughout the state, and the amount of cooperation that exists in this area between hospitals, physicians, us, the health plan, is extraordinary. We all work together. We take our hats off, and it's like, how do we work together to benefit the community? And I think that's something that needs to be really recognized. You know, we at CenCal recognize it. It doesn't exist everywhere. In fact, it doesn't exist in a lot of places. And again, I think the next issue is social determinants of health, and I think that's something that we'll be certainly trying to lead the charge on. And we will continue to partner with our physicians and providers to see where how we can further improve things. But the big caveat is if the Affordable Care Act is repealed, all bets are off, and it's a whole new game. So with that, I thank you for your time.
Hey, it's great to be home. Love living in Santa Maria. Great to be here. I have the privilege of, and I appreciate being asked to talk today, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about the healthcare reform, not quite to the extent that Bob went through it, and talk about what the future could look like, should look like, in northern Santa Barbara County, and specifically what our commitment and obligation is to our community, and a little bit about what the future is going to look like. What's interesting is we shouldn't kid ourselves. Healthcare reform was really about the cost of healthcare as a percent of the gross national product. And the economic model that we had in place prior to healthcare reform was not sustainable. As we saw what was happening to the gross national product and healthcare as a percent of that, and what the projected cost was going to be, it absolutely was not sustainable. So the plan was to implement a healthcare reform plan, policy, that could be implemented over a course of years, that could be modified and modified to the extent that we create stability and access for healthcare within our system. As you continue to hear, that issue continues to be debated, and probably will continue to be debated throughout this year, next year, midterm elections, and who knows, maybe 2 years beyond that. But more than anything, there are key components to healthcare reform that all of us need to think about and address. The expanded access, which you heard Bob Freeman talk about, goes well beyond just the poor and the disadvantaged. There's a provision within the healthcare reform called guaranteed issue. And what that says, essentially, is that if health plans are being sold to individuals or groups, anybody who wants to purchase can. Consistency and access to coverage from state to state became an important issue also. If you moved out of California or moved into California from another state, could you have a consistent health plan with the plan that you've had in the previous state? With healthcare reform, that became a mandate. The Medicaid expansion, as Bob talked about, went well beyond just supporting the disadvantaged. And we've known this for a long time. There are many middle-income members of our community who simply didn't have health insurance. We had many uninsured or underinsured community members, part of our community, without coverage. The final issue, the second final issue, which is an important issue for all of us, is pre-existing conditions. Pre-existing conditions can affect any one of us at any given time. God forbid that something happened to any of us, our children or our grandchildren, to where they have a pre-existing condition and cannot afford to have health insurance. Medicare reform was part of the overall process in terms of providing some innovative coverage options that would be included in the reform that would allow us to look at how do we provide alternative means of healthcare services for the Medicare population that would be more efficient, that would be more cost-effective for the government. So as you look at the elements for the delivery system as part of healthcare reform, you look at hospital and outpatient centers with increased efficiency and coordinated care, look at skilled nursing facilities, and look at what kind of patients might be able to be cared for in a long-term care facility or a subacute facility as opposed to acute care hospital. What we're seeing more and more is the development of primary care clinics, walk-in clinics, retail clinics, narrow networks of partnership. Why is that important? Because we know that if we can provide access to primary care or care early in a person's injury or illness, the better the outcome, the better the care they can receive. The other component is post-acute services. How do we expand post-acute services that would allow us to care for patients who may not necessarily need to be in a hospital but need supportive care at home? So regardless of what happens with healthcare reform, and healthcare reform will continue to be debated, where it lands, I don't think any of us are really sure, but regardless of what happens in healthcare reform, we have an obligation and responsibility to our communities. Marion Regional Medical Center will celebrate 5 years of opening its new hospital this month. With that, we made a commitment to the community to ensure that we had the latest in technology, top physicians, caregivers providing care for our patients, continue with innovation, and ensure that our patients receive care in a healing environment that was safe. When you look at programs like cardiology, we know that if a patient has a cardiac episode somewhere at home or somewhere else in the community, we know that we can get them into the cath lab, save their heart, muscle, also save their life, and within a day or so be able to go home safely. That service is not going to change with healthcare reform. We have a commitment and obligation and responsibility to assure that we continue developing programs like cardiology services. There's a new term that's out, it's called structural heart services for cardiology, where cardiac surgeons and cardiologists are able to do procedures through catheters that were once done with open chest procedures. That has just started, and it will revolutionize cardiac services for our community. Healthcare reform cannot stop the progress and our development of cardiac services. Maternal child health, there is nothing better than knowing that the mother and baby who delivered in our hospital went home safely. It's our responsibility and obligation to assure that we have the appropriate prenatal care provided for our patients, that we have a safe delivery, and that when the baby does need to be in a neonatal intensive care unit, that we're able to do so without separating mother and baby. The worst thing that we can do, one of the most difficult things that we do sometimes is separate mother and baby right after delivery because of the need of the baby. By having a neonatology unit, which Marion has, we're able to keep babies at home safely with their mother. Neuroscientists, unlike cardiac episodes, strokes, or somebody having a stroke is different. When you have a cardiac episode, you pretty much know you're having it. The issue with stroke is sometimes patients don't really realize they're having a stroke until later. What is important for neuroscientists and patients with stroke is that you have an integrated, coordinated care for that patient to make sure they get into the right center once they come into the emergency department. Imaging services would love to use the entire budget of a hospital for technology, and it's never going to end. MRIs, CT scanners, interventional labs, they're all very expensive tools, but they're very important diagnostic tools that help us diagnose what's wrong with the patient. Cancer care, we're very fortunate. Mission Hope just celebrated also 5 years of opening this past month. And when it opened, it was the only fully integrated cancer center between Los Angeles and San Francisco. And the benefit of Mission Hope, as most of you know, is it allowed us to bring the most advanced clinical care through its affiliation with UCLA into our own center, using the most advanced technology to care for patients. And also now to coordinate cancer care with not only UCLA but also with Stanford. Trauma services, we got together many years ago, our hospitals did, to determine what's the best method of providing for trauma services for our county, for our community. And we agreed to create a decentralized trauma plan where we would coordinate care for our patients because time is important. Time is healing. And so we created a decentralized trauma system where we coordinated care with all the hospitals in our county and then outside the county for those patients that needed to go outside to ensure that our patients got the very best care and the greatest opportunity for a good outcome for care. And that partnership has continued to serve us well. One of the outcomes of healthcare reform has forced us to look more and more at primary care and to set up primary care centers along with walk-in centers to give patients a greater access to primary care as opposed to using the emergency department. The emergency departments aren't going away. They are there to support our patients, but what's important is that we have access for primary care services. Marion opened its family medicine residency program 3 years ago, and this year will be the first graduating class from that program. And of the 5 residents who are graduating and will become physicians, they're physicians now, when they finish the residency program, 3 of those 5 physicians are going to stay in our community. We anticipate next year, when we have 6 graduating or completing the program, 4 will stay. What that allows us to do is continue to expand primary care access, but also serves as a recruitment for us for primary care doctors because the most difficult positions to recruit, even in our geography, is primary care. So as we look at the future, and we look at the future in a way where it is bright. I try to keep a very optimistic view of what health is going to be and what our community is going to be. We deal with the challenges. But regardless of what happens in healthcare reform, there are certain provisions that we have to think about as the government weighs the issue. One of the biggest issues for the government is that healthcare expansion, unlike traditional Medicaid or Medi-Cal in the state of California, where the state pays 50% and the federal government matches 50%, for healthcare expansion, the states pay 10% of the Medicaid or Medi-Cal bill. And the federal government pays 90%. That's the issue. So the federal government is saying, while we set this up, pay 90-10, maybe that's too high. I don't know if it's too high or too low, but that's the issue that's behind the driving force for healthcare reform and continued discussions. One of the issues. The other is pre-existing conditions. And one of the things that is being considered right now in Washington is, should we simply set up a risk pool for those patients with pre-existing conditions? I've not seen risk pools ever work. I've not seen ever enough money into risk pools. And if that's the case, at what point are the premiums so high that patients with pre-existing conditions simply can't be covered again? It's an important element to be considered as we hear the debate for healthcare reform. Same with expanded access. The other is the impact this can have on our senior population. Because right now there are guaranteed max premiums charged to the senior population. As we know, the older we get, the more we need healthcare. And so as we use more healthcare, our costs go up, premium costs go up. Right now there's guaranteed max on that level. If healthcare reform changes to the extent where it relaxes that maximum coverage, it will put a disproportionate cost on healthcare premiums for the aging population. Finally, again, regardless of what happens with healthcare reform, we have a commitment and an obligation to ensure that we continue providing advanced technology for our community, that we continue recruiting and retaining caregivers and physicians from top medical schools, that we have an obligation to ensure that our patients are cared for in a safe and healing environment. And finally, more than anything, we have an obligation and responsibility to assure that our patients, our community, our friends, our family, and our neighbors receive the very best care they can receive in our community. Thank you and have a great day.
Okay, so the Lombok Valley is served by the Lombok Healthcare District. And then I'll talk about that and then the LDM's information itself, a little bit about the area, and then what we see going ahead locally. So Dan talked about an increase in the population in the state of California around the early part, middle of last century, and that's very true. There was a lot of industrialization, people moving into the state, in addition to which we had a lot of servicemen returning from the war, and what that led to was obviously an increase in the population without a concurrent increase in the number of acute beds available. The cities were fine, there were lots of hospitals there, but the rural areas in the state were not. Then came the local hospital district law, and what that did was that created special districts enacted for a specific purpose in a specific area. It was a new governmental entity, it was independent of local or county jurisdiction. So Lombok Healthcare District, for instance, is a political subdivision in the state of California. They had the ability to impose property taxes, issue debt, enter into contracts, buy things, hire people, all that sorts of things. Public hospitals in 22 counties are provided by healthcare districts. There are something like 43 healthcare districts that have hospitals. In 22 counties, these are the only public hospitals. So the original Lombok Hospital District was the first established in the state of California under this law. There was another healthcare district actually that was established prior to Lombok, but that wasn't a hospital district. And each of these districts is governed by a board of directors, 5 elected members. So to give you an idea of the coverage of healthcare districts, these are all the different counties with hospitals run by healthcare districts. So it's quite varied, and few spots that aren't covered. For the rest of them, it's pretty much good coverage for the districts. So, Lombok, what's our district look like? It crosses zip codes. It's that area right there that you see with the dotted line. San Antonio Creek up north is the northern boundary, and the spine across the going east-west. and then comes down south of 401 down to Gaviota and then along the coast back to Vancouver. Those are the district boundaries. Now at the bottom right of that boundary where the Gaviota tunnel is, and you kind of go past the tunnel a mile or two, there's a little turnoff, and I have a picture of that. And that's the turnoff, and that's where we are. So, the Lompoc Valley Medical Center is actually the entity that provides the care for the population in the Lompoc Valley. We have a general acute care hospital, 60 beds. Of those 60 beds, we have 6 which are CCU, ICU type of thing. 6 of them which are labor and delivery. And in addition to the 60, we have 12 ED beds. Now, in the absence of the general acute care hospital in Lompoc, of course, then the population would have to travel either an hour south or 45 minutes north to get any kind of hospital type care. We also have a 110-bed comprehensive care center and a 50-bed champion center. It's a chemical dependency recovery hospital. In addition to that, we recently got into some agreements with local physicians to provide physician services or to help provide physician services, both primary and specialty care, and then a number of different outpatient type things, sleep lab, rehab, diagnostic imaging, lab, and counseling services. So we covered the areas of obviously Lompoc, Vanderbilt Village, and the Air Force Base. The prison is part of our district. And a small parts of the Goleta and Gluten zip codes. A total of 59,000 people, 600 square miles of land. And it ends up being about 14% of the Santa Barbara County population. I'll give you a bit of an idea of the different places that we have providers in Lompoc. These are the larger groups. The mothership, of course, is that big red star, and that's the Lompoc Valley Medical Center. It's the acute hospital. And then we have a number of the different outpatient facilities and other long-term care, etc. facilities that I talked about. The blue ones are the non-elevating facilities. They're also the important part of the healthcare provision system in Lompoc. So we have Sansom, CHC, the county clinic. It is a separate physicians group on the southeast side. And then the base and the prison have their own clinics as well that provide at least local care. Okay, so healthcare reform, obviously we'll be spending a lot of time on that, and much wiser heads than mine will be tackling that point, so I won't go into that too much. But I will go into some of the local things that we've done, and so one of the things that healthcare districts can do, like I said earlier, is that entry into contracts and that sort of thing. So we did, and we entered into contract with the radiation oncology service, and so we now provide radiation oncology services in town, in addition with a medical oncology. Our point is not to do everything, but to do the things that we do them well. So we won't do the heart transplant and all that sort of thing, obviously not large enough, but we'll take care of the people that need heart transplants and send them on the right way. A lot of people have had to travel to, and if you're suffering from the after effects of chemotherapy, then a 45-minute drive is too much. And so then having an oncology service in town is very useful. Same thing with radiation oncology. The fact that we are a political subdivision of the state of California is kind of useful as well, because that opens up opportunities in terms of additional funding that non-governmental entities do not have access to. So Prime is a prime example. Public Hospital Redesign Incentives in Medi-Cal, it's a program that is a CMS federal program, that has to be actually sponsored by the state. So the DHCS sponsors this program, and what that allows for us to do is to open up local projects to make sure that we're addressing local needs. So as a result, we end up being able to provide a lot of the specialty care that I spoke about earlier. Telemedicine for neurology especially. Chuck spoke about people having strokes and that sort of thing. We have an excellent EMS system set up for heart attacks, and now we're getting there with strokes as well in the county. And so we need a neurologist available to help diagnose strokes. It's kind of hard to have a full-time neurologist in a community as small as ours, so then we use telemedicine. And we were fortunate to jump on the coattails of our partners in the South Cottage, and we have a very good teleneurology service as a result. Allows for population health. Bob talked about all this business outside of the hospital, taking care of patients before and after they need the hospital services. So population health, getting into wellness programs. And then, again, he spoke about ED frequent flyers and that sort of thing, so that's where the care transitions comes into play. What can we do about these folks after they leave so that they don't have to come back? All right, that's my presentation. Any questions?
Good morning. My name is Ron Work, and I have the privilege of serving as the president and CEO at Cottage Health in Santa Barbara. And I want to thank Peter Rupert and Kathleen Campbell and for the invitation to be here this morning. Chuck, it's great to be in your hometown, and really wonderful to be on this panel. I'm going to share a few thoughts that will continue some of the themes that you've already heard, and I'll try to add just a twist or two here and there to add to the conversation before we move to Q&A. The sound bites I'll cover in 10 minutes are local hospital economic impact quickly, some current and future developments that are very similar to the efforts that you've heard already. And then healthcare, and I emphasize financing reform, because we really aren't trying to do healthcare reform. We're really changing the way we finance healthcare. And so we'll talk about really one of the core issues is cost, and all of the movement around financing really doesn't address some of those core issues. So we'll just touch on that. Quickly, very busy slide, but this is the economic summit, and so this is an economic slide that tells you that we're a very large workforce provider. In the lower left, we have 6,600 jobs at our hospitals in the county. This is all of our hospitals. This comes from the California Hospital Association. And we spend about $1.3 billion per year. And when you use economic multipliers to that, the impact of that, and then the subsequent spending and investment by our employees and investments into the community results in about a $2.8 billion economic impact in our county from our hospitals, Lompoc, Marion, and the Cottage Health Hospitals as well. And so just, this is where it gets invested. Where does it come from? And Dan mentioned a bit about the source of funding. Of course, it comes from government payers. It also comes from all of us. It comes from employers who pay premiums for their employees, and it comes from individuals who buy individual plans, and that's the revenue side of this. But there is a significant economic impact. More recently, not included here, is a significant investment in capital. Because of the state seismic law resulting from the Northridge earthquake, we've all rebuilt our hospitals. And as Mr. Kova mentioned, Marion has finished theirs. We will finish our last one at Santa Barbara next summer. Lompoc has rebuilt. And so that's about $1.3 billion of capital investment over the last 8 or 10 years, much of which flows back into the community. So just wanted to touch on that point. By the way, there was no state or federal funding for any of that. It was a state unfunded mandate, and so we are so grateful to all of the people, I'm sure many in this room, who have philanthropically supported the rebuilding of our hospitals. And of course, all of the individuals who voted nearly unanimously for the bond issue that rebuilt the beautiful hospital in Lompoc. So many, many thanks for your support. Current and future developments. I took some notes when Dan Walters was talking, and of the 4 core issues, before we get into this, 3 of them we try to deal with all of our hospitals on a local level. So education, workforce is a major issue. The supply and demand of nurses particularly, and high quality physicians is an ongoing challenge for hospitals in general. And so, the solutions have been all local. We have invested in Santa Barbara City College that has doubled the size of the nursing program there. We have worked with Cal State Channel Islands and opened a baccalaureate nursing program in Goleta that now has 66 students and 22 graduates every year. There are similar relationships between Marion and Allen Hancock also. So these kinds of joint efforts with education really pay off for the supply of nursing staff on education. On housing, major issue for us. So we have built 115 homes in Santa Barbara, 70% of which we've sold at about 1/3 of market rates to our employees because of the challenge of home ownership in Santa Barbara. We also do low-interest mortgage assistance that has helped several hundred employees over the years acquire their homes as well. And on transportation, we subsidize commuters. 25% of our employees live outside of the local Santa Barbara area and commute from North County or from Ventura, and we support that commuting. We actually pay employees not to park in the parking structure, so they find alternative forms of transportation to get to work. On this page, I'll just go through it very quickly. Very similar to what's going on here in Santa Maria. The cardiovascular breakthroughs are really significant, and Mr. Kovac mentioned this, but the ability to provide both aortic and mitral valve without doing open heart surgery, particularly right now for people who would probably not survive open heart surgery, is life-changing. And we've done over 100 what are called TAVRs now at Cottage, and these are individuals who are very compromised, who have really a second lease on life. And so great breakthrough there. Neurosciences, we implemented a intraoperative MRI. It was a $15 million investment so that we would have MRI, advanced imaging technology inside the operating room, particularly to support brain tumor surgery and the accuracy and precision that's required to support that. Again, on trauma, we've got a great collaboration in our county on this. The American College of Surgeons has just upped their game on the requirements for level 1 or level 2 trauma centers, so we'll be applying for level 1 trauma status this fall when they come and do their site visit. Again, we've got a very good system of getting patients to the right hospital as quickly as we can based on our 3 broad geographic regions. And then in pediatrics, we have a very broad scope of pediatric specialty services in our Cottage Children's Medical Center that we continue to expand upon. I want to just mention, do just a slightly deeper dive into population health and research. Population health is not something that hospitals have really felt was part of their mission until fairly recently. And so it's a term we use a lot, and so it really refers to what's the hospital's role outside of the walls of the hospital. What responsibilities do we have to try to improve, in partnership with others, the health status of the communities that we serve? And there are a lot of activities that go on here with Marion, with their community benefit programs in Santa Maria. Same is true in Lompoc, and in Santa Barbara, it's true for us as well. We've just done all of us are required now, by the way, to do a community health needs assessment every 3 years. We've completed that, 2,500 household phone calls. Some of you may have received calls. It was throughout the county. And we did listening tours with about 230 leaders, health, faith, community, education, to try to find out what are the priorities for us to work on to improve the health. Not just respond to trauma and heart disease, but trying to get out in front of that. And so when you look at the data, Santa Barbara County is relatively healthy. We are generally healthier than the rest of California, except for one topic, which is diagnosis of clinical depression interestingly enough. We're well higher than that than the rest of the state. And in terms of comparing ourselves with national goals, we actually are ahead of those on, you can look at this quickly, on these items on the left: overall good health, alcohol use, meaning less, physical inactivity, meaning less, oral health, smoking, obesity. We're good in that. We are not as good as the national targets in insurance status, whether you have a primary care doctor. You see cost as a barrier to care, diabetes, food insecurity, and as I mentioned, depression. And so this tells a story that we're better than average in most areas that are really significant when we think about health. But the story is way too busy to look at. But if you just look at the red and the green on this, these are those same metrics. And when you break it down by ethnicity, by income, and by whether or not the individual has a high school diploma, you start to see significant disparities in health outcomes. And it stands to reason. And in our county, if you are Hispanic or white, you are well above or well below the state average. And the same is true whether or not you make more or less than $35,000. And the same is true. And the biggest differentiator is whether or not you graduated from high school. So education is huge in terms of the downstream effects on health, as of course is income. And so we now see it for all of our hospitals as increasingly part of our responsibility to partner with the community health centers, with the Santa Barbara neighborhood clinics, with the public health department, with CenCal. And so we've got collaborations going on to try to figure out what to do in this area. The priorities that emerged from this were access to care, the level of chronic conditions, mental health on everybody's list, and food and housing insecurity. And so we are working with our colleagues, and as Bob Freeman said, we've got, I think, quite an unusual situation here where we meet regularly, we all serve different communities, and so as a result, we are very collaborative in trying to address these issues in a thoughtful manner. Lastly, at Cottage, and this is really part of physician recruitment. Again, we all want to recruit the very best doctors in the country. And so we have developed, with our board support of an investment into a research institute, a collaborative effort principally with UC Santa Barbara. And we don't have a medical school in Santa Barbara County. We have a world-class university. And as a result of that, we've got physicians on our medical staffs who are very interested in research, and those who are practicing at other academic health centers who would come here without a medical school if they could continue their research. And so that's why we're investing in this, and this is just a list of some of the areas of research, and time doesn't permit to really go into that. Healthcare finance and reform, last topic here. $3 trillion we're spending nationally, 31% of that to hospitals, 19% to physicians and other clinical. As Mr. Kova mentioned, it's unsustainable. We're at 18% of GDP spending on health at this point, and we aren't getting what we're paying for. This is, if you look at the left-hand column, we are the most expensive country in terms of what we're spending per capita on health. And on the right hand, that's life expectancy, and we are at the bottom of that list. And you would have, if there was a similar slide here on infant mortality, it would tell the same story. So we've got things to work on, and they aren't all inside the hospitals, and that's why we're moving outside the walls. I find this one very interesting. If you look at, this is a couple of years old, so the very middle of this bar chart shows that the percent of GDP spent on healthcare is 16.3%, so we're up another 1.5% from that now. But if you add what is spent on social services and compare it with all these other countries, we're in the middle of the pack. And so what's the conclusion there? Perhaps a greater investment into some of these things we've been talking about, social support, can help us reduce the ultimate cost of medical care. Because when we combine those, we're not spending as much of our GDP as France, Sweden, Austria, and on down the list there. And then we also spend an extraordinary amount of money at the end of life. And this we call our hockey stick slide. This is the amount that we spend by decade of life. And you can see that when we get close to 60, we're pretty much the same as these other countries until we turn 60, and then we are putting a lot of money into our medical care for those of us who are over 60 relative to what other countries spend. So that's something for us to think a lot about. There is a tremendous differential between what payers pay for hospital care, and it's something that just isn't talked much about. It's a huge contributor to our cost problem. So this slide tells you who uses the hospital, and quickly, it's roughly 70% Medicare and Medi-Cal, and who pays for it. And you can see that who pays for it, it's mostly paid for by commercial insurance. And so what's going on there? At Cottage, and I think any of our hospitals could give you this example, at Cottage, this shows you the increasing history of government shortfalls by year. And so this is our Cottage Health hospitals, and you look at all the Medicare patients and the Medi-Cal patients, and the amount that we collect relative to what it costs is now about $200 million per year on a roughly $750 million operating budget. And so who makes up the difference? And so here's a math problem. If Cottage has a census of 275 patients, if 122 of those are Medicare, Medicare pays us 68% of what it costs to take care of a Medicare patient. 45 of those patients are Medi-Cal. We get paid 50% of costs from Medi-Cal. And then 13 patients had no insurance, self-pay. We get 0% of cost. How much do those 95 patients with a commercial insurance plan pay? And the answer is 190% of cost. And this is true in hospitals across the United States, where there's this cost shift that's been going on with the entitlement programs over the decades, where we shift that loss every year, a bit more every year, over to the private sector. And so this system works because the private sector is essentially subsidizing those of us who are entitled to benefits through these entitlement programs. And it's something that adds to this report that this system is really not sustainable. Covered California, I think we're fairly responsible here. Cost, we are working on cost all the time in all of your county's hospitals. And so just as a proxy for that, you look at what an average silver plan costs. This is for a 28-year-old because a 28-year-old produced this slide. I would have had a different slide if I had produced it. But you can see that it is less expensive for this plan in San Diego and Los Angeles, but it's quite a bit more in San Francisco. And so we're, obviously there's always work to be done there, but we're not extraordinarily expensive relative to the rest of the state, as you can see here. And then this just reinforces, if you look at just the top two bars, you can see what Bob and others have said, that we've seen a pretty significant shift away from uninsured into insured, principally through the expansion of Medicaid in those states that participated. So what's happened at Cottage? You can just see the volume here. Our inpatients, we are an aging county, and so you can see an uptick here in Medicare patients, federal government columns on the left. Over the last few years, you can see state government picking up quite a bit. That's our Medi-Cal increase. And then HMO has actually gone down a little bit because we're seeing people move from commercial insurance to Medicare as we turn 65. And then our self-pay is down quite a bit. That's the uninsured category. And that's been great. Those patients previously paid us zero, and now they are covered by Bob's program, and we get 50% of cost for those patients. The ERs have been impacted quite heavily. All of our ERs have seen tremendous growth, and particularly in recent years with patients with mental health needs in our emergency departments. And you can just see here that decline in self-pay patients, the uninsured, which used our ER a lot because they had no doctor to go to. We see that shift over to those same patients are now covered by Medi-Cal. But as Bob mentioned, the old habits die hard. If you're used to going to the ER and you're coming in and getting treated relatively quickly and don't have a doctor, you're going to probably still do that for a while. So we're just starting to see repatriation of these patients into our safety net providers, Santa Barbara Neighborhood Clinics, Public Health Department, and so it would just be a shame for us to lose this ability to get these individuals the care they need at the right place at the right time. To sum up, last slide I promised, is are we going to repeal, replace, or revise? I heard Peter say at the South Coast Economic Summit on Monday that we don't like to forecast. And so that is, who knows what's going to happen here. It's, repeal is through the House, longer deliberations in the Senate. An important point I would make is that the Affordable Care Act was about a break even for hospitals. Hospitals nationally agreed in supporting the ACA. We agreed to take a $550 billion reduction in Medicare payments, which contributes to that commercial insurance problem. But the concept was that we believed, and it turned out to be true, that we would get so many people from out of the ranks of the uninsured into the insured, and that would make up for that reduction in Medicare payments. And so we can get 40 million, turns out to be 24. We thought as many as 40 million Americans insured to get paid less by Medicare, get paid for taking care of them through Medicaid and through the exchanges. And so that's been about right on that. The problem now is that there is no one talking about restoring those cuts. When we talk about repealing and rolling back expansion, nobody's talking about restoring the cuts that hospitals took. We've had greater coverage, others have said that. Really important providers with our community clinics, colleagues, they have been a great partner, and it is very hard to think about this rug being pulled out from under those providers as well. The insurance reforms that Chuck mentioned have been very popular, and many will probably remain, but we really haven't solved one of the core problems, and that's the basic cost and this cost shifting and inordinate burden on the private sector in our country. And so with that, again, I thank you for being here, and we really appreciate the warm welcome. Thank you.
So I want to thank our speakers for coming, Dan, everyone. These are issues, and I think the goal of the Economic Forecast Project is really to, bring this kind of information and outreach so that you can make, more informed decisions, just not in your own personal lives, but in business and when you get into the voting booth. So really appreciate their time. So I call this one, so we lost the Colbert Report. So I call this the Repair Report. So I'm a professor at UCSD and run the Economic Forecast Project. By the way, if you see this link here, www.efp.ucsb.edu/talk, and you have a iPad or something, you can go there right now and you can see the slides, or later on you can see the slides. They'll be up there that you can look at. So this is going to be a picture, and again, I show this all the time, but I made an animation. So on the vertical axis is the log, logarithm thing of GDP, real GDP, so we get rid of inflation. And then I want to show you how an economy grows. And the way an economy grows, that's the Great Depression. Then we have World War II. And now the economy just grows and grows. And you can see what this means is, as it's growing such that our incomes are growing, because GDP is really our income. And every year, year in and year out, the economy grows on average, and you can see where we are today. So that's where we are. And that looks to be, if you draw a straight line through there, it's about 3% growth on average per year. What I really like about this graph, as I said many times, take a moment to pick out your least favorite president ever since 1929. You can't see them. They don't show up. Good presidents don't show up, bad presidents don't show up. The economy is just too robust. That's hope. That's hope. My version of hope, anyway. So here's the current environment, and this is what's known as the Fed dot plot. So the Federal Reserve, when they have their meetings, they come out with something called the dot plot. And what the dot plot does Each dot here is part of the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee. And each one, some of them are voting, some not. This is the Board of Governors and the presidents of the Federal Reserve Banks. And this is their guess as to what the federal funds rate is going to be. So when they're thinking about interest rate policy, this is their guess. Now, you kind of hope it's closer together than this. You know, at least I do. I mean, you can see, for example, going into 2018, there are some people, I don't know who the bottom lunatic is in the blue there, they think the Fed funds rate is going to be exactly the same, 0.75 as it is today. Others feel it could go up to, 3 1/4. So when they go to Washington and meet, this is what they argue about. What is really going on in the economy? What's happening? And as you see, if you go out farther, they're expecting year in, year out, they're going to be raising the Fed funds rate. And they're optimistic. In fact, the last report that came out from the Fed last week, they basically said, look, Q1 GDP was weak, but we're going to ignore it. We think it's transitory. It's no big deal. Many Q1s are small, and so we're just going to ignore it. Well, maybe. Then they argued that the labor market is very tight, meaning that unemployment's about as low as it's going to get. So, to me though, if I look at this graph, this is a graph of the quarterly change, seasonally adjusted in annual terms, of GDP growth. And what you see is the first quarter was very, very weak. Now, as I said, the Fed has said, we're going to ignore this because we think the economy is strong. One could look at this and say, you know what, let's look at Q3 and Q4 just before that. Those two were strong, but the 3 before that were weak. Maybe the strong stuff was transitory. I don't know. I don't forecast, so I don't know. But, so the idea here is there is signs of weakness out there. This is a picture of net payroll employment change. And what is this? This is just how our economy creates jobs, and we talk about job creation. And the way it works from the Bureau of Labor Statistics is they come out with an estimate. That's the red dots you can see. The red dots are the first estimate, and then the next month they revise it, and then the next month they revise it again, and that's the final estimate. So the height of the bar is their final estimate. And many of these, you can see that they can be off by 50,000 employees month to month. That's how big the error is. Last month, they had 211,000. Great report. Everything is looking strong. And so the Fed is sort of thinking now that because the labor market's tight, they're going to need to really start thinking seriously about jacking up the Fed funds rate. And that's their, what they've been saying for a while. On the other hand, if you look at this, so this is the monthly change again in employment, but now I've gone back to 1986. And the blue is the actual monthly change, and the red is the 12-month moving average. So if you look at the 12-month moving average, you can see lately it's dipped. It's trending down a little bit. And if you look at the rest of the years, you'll see that typically when it starts to trend down, it doesn't trend back up too fast. So there are signs of weakness in the economy, and so the Fed's still a bit skittish, and they're going to be skittish for a while, I think. So now I want to talk a little bit about reallocation. And I want to talk about this because there's a bunch of things out there now. Healthcare is one. We saw the repeal go through the House. Trump is talking about international trade. That's going to reallocate jobs. Many, many things out there about reallocation. So let me explain what I mean. So all the time, people are reallocating. Jobs are reallocating. People are moving to different houses. Industries grow and shrink. Firms enter, they leave. Jobs come, they go, and people move. People move far for jobs, typically. So if you look at why people move, if they move long distances, it's for jobs. If they move short distances, it's for housing or family planning reasons. All of these things are affected by things like international trade, housing prices, technological change, minimum wages, immigration policy, building walls, those kind of things. That's going to affect the way our economy looks. And it's going to affect whether or not you have a job, whether or not you move your house. So these are all things that we need to really think about seriously. So this is I don't know what this is. This is a graph of something. So what it is this is for the world, and you can see we have Europe and we have Japan, North America. So the colors are that part of the world. Each dot represents a particular country. And on the vertical axis is the corporate tax rate. So this is kind of a sense of the business environment in these countries. And you can see that back in 1981, many countries had tax rates above 50%, or close to 50%. So these are corporate tax rates, and we talked, when Dan talked about sort of making the environment healthy for creating jobs, this is kind of the notion. So let's go forward and see what the world looks like, and GDP per capita is on the horizontal axis. And now you're going to see what happened is the whole world basically has cut corporate taxes. That's what they did, and they've gotten richer. And by the way, the size of the dot is the share of employment in agriculture. See that little one way over there? That's Luxembourg, way at the end over there. They don't grow anything, maybe tomatoes or something in their backyard, and they're really rich, and they have low corporate taxes. So this is a notion that the world has kind of agreed in some sense that lowering the corporate income tax is probably a good thing. And so we're going to continue to see that, I believe. I mean, Trump's trying to do that now. That was for the world. This is now for the United States. So again, the colors represent different parts of the United States. And you can see that the West is blue. And basically what this shows is on the vertical axis, we can't do corporate tax rates because that's a federal thing. So on the vertical axis instead, I put the percent of startup firms. And on the horizontal axis, again, is going to be personal income per capita. The size of the dots is the employment in manufacturing, the share of employment in manufacturing. Now we can move this forward, and we can see that, what's happened. So startups, which generate new jobs, by the way, were going along great until the Great Recession. And then it sank like a stone, about 30% lower than before. So right now, we're creating much fewer startups than we had in the past. Many reasons out there, maybe it's because of the financial mess, that people had a hard time getting money, the startup firms, whatever. But when we think about these jobs being recreated, that is reallocated, it happens all the time. So this is a picture of the US, what's happened since 1939, and it's evident to everybody what's going on. So here you can see that agriculture, which back in 1950 was about 20% of employment in agriculture. Today, it's 1.9%. And we're producing tons of food, and the reasons there are we're very technologically advanced in food production. You can see what's happened to manufacturing. Manufacturing was close to 40%. In the 30% range, now we're down to less than 10% in manufacturing. And that's a trend that will likely continue. One thing you have to be aware of, and I think we have to think seriously about when we look at politics, is can you stop that from happening? Can Trump or anyone else say, you know what, I think we've lost too many manufacturing jobs, let's get them back. Let's produce more coal. I can tell you right now, my first job was in West Virginia, big coal mining place. I can tell you, I've talked to many coal miners, no one wants to be in a coal mine. Believe me, they don't like it. It's horrible. So what you try to do to protect these jobs, you have to realize you're going to hurt other things. We're going to protect jobs, and I've heard estimates that if we're going to build all this new infrastructure in the U.S. using only U.S. steel, that costs somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 60% more than if we bought steel from Japan and other places. So we get less infrastructure. So this whole notion that we want to stop trade is just silly. It's what got us here today. It's what made us rich. Doing the stuff we're really good at and trading for the things we're not. So that's an important lesson that we have to know. And even in the short run, there's lots of churning in the labor market. Churning meaning in every day, lots of jobs are destroyed, lots of jobs are created. There's lots of vacancies, firms willing to hire, and there's lots of people unemployed standing up in employment lines. And there's quits and layoffs. This is what I mean. So this is a picture. The red is unemployment. These are the number of people unemployed. You can see during the Great Recession, which is the blue bar. The blue bars here are recessions. You can see that about almost 15 million people were unemployed during the Great Recession. Today it's down to about 6 or 7 million. And you can see even during those times, there are lots of vacancies. So right today, as you can see, there's roughly 6 million people unemployed and 5 million open jobs. That always happens. Is it ever going to be that there are no vacancies? No. Firms are looking for workers just like workers are looking for firms. And that match has to happen over time. And so what you want to see, basically, and you can see that vacancies fall a lot during a recession. As you look at the blue bar, you see that vacancies fall a lot. There was only 2 million job openings compared to 4 million or 5 million that we have now. What I meant by quits, so again, the blue bars are recessions. These are separations, job separations. So quits. The blue line is quits. So what you can see, I really like this graph, by the way, just so that you know. So I like it for the following reason, that this is a way to look at the labor market that most people don't look at when you think about the health of the labor market. Unemployment's a weird statistic. Unemployment's weird because you have to divide by something, right? So there's the number of people unemployed divided by the people looking for jobs and already working. Both of those things can change. Here, if you notice, during a recession, the 2001 recession and the Great Recession, quits fall like crazy. Why? I just showed you this picture. You don't want to quit during a recession. There are no vacancies. There are no jobs open. During a recession, like the Great Recession, you just kiss the boss's ass. That's what you do. You go get coffee, what can I do for you, your windows look a little dirty, You got to keep your job during a recession. And that's why when you see these quit rates falling like they do during a recession, and then coming back up like we see today, and right now we're back to where I think the labor market's really healthy. That is, people are willing to quit. And why do you quit? You quit to get a better job. You quit to get higher pay. You quit for better conditions. You quit for all kinds of reasons. So this movement up the job ladder allows people to quit and then find better jobs. So to me, this is really healthy, what we're seeing right now. So what creates jobs? Well, new ideas and techniques create new jobs. I don't know what the average age is in here, but do you remember liquid paper? This was on every desk in America. In your lifetime. It was created in your lifetime. And you know where it is now? You know what that picture's from? The Women's Museum in Dallas. It's now in a museum. And you guys were using it. I asked my graduate student, Christine, who's over there, I said, did you ever use liquid paper? She goes, because she's young. She goes, I did. And I said, why? She goes, oh, when I was a kid, I used it to make French nails. It was invented by a secretary, by the way. It wasn't invented by some company who got this idea that maybe we should, be able to fix mistakes. It was invented by a secretary who was tired of having to rip the page out of the typewriter and retype it. Went home at night, made up a little batch of something, called it liquid paper. What destroys jobs? Guess what? New ideas and techniques. There's a really nerdy thing to do, which I always recommend. There's something called the Dictionary of Job Titles, going back to the 1930s. It's unbelievable how many jobs have disappeared. Unbelievable. By the way, there's no Iceman anymore. We got refrigerators. Guess what? You don't need people to carry around ice. I mean, these things seem stupid right now, but these are all big changes. Do you remember typewriter memory? How about this picture? Remember this thing?
Oh, yeah.
This is your typing file. You see it on the screen, that little screen, and then if you like it, you hit enter, and now it enters. Guess what? That got rid of liquid paper. Now all those people that were in the little liquid paper factory lost their jobs. Brother typewriters. Some of you maybe remember Smith Corona. They're gone. That doesn't exist anymore. Those factories are gone. We have better jobs now. We don't have to worry about looking on this. We can do it automatically, fast. We have autocorrect. I mean, it's just great for us people who can't spell very well. So this is what I mean about job creation. This is net job creation. What is this? This is the number of jobs created minus the number of jobs that went away. And what you can see is, since 1990, this thing moves around a lot. You can see the Great Recession. You can see recessions here. Net job creation goes negative, meaning we're getting rid of more jobs than we're creating. And you can see today, we're back up to about somewhere between 2 and 4% on net. So that is, we might have 8% creation and 6% destruction. We're at net 2, something like that. So this is made up of two components, right? This is made up of the job creation rate So the job creation rate here, you can see, has after the Great Recession, fell a lot. We're creating fewer jobs than we did in the past. This is the job destruction rate. And guess what? Because that net rate was about the same, it turns out that the job destruction rate is also falling. So while we're not creating as many jobs, we're not destroying them either. Right? So we're kind of in this situation where the creation rate is low, and I would like to see the higher rate, startups, etc. But that's where we are today. And you can see Santa Barbara in blue, California is in red, and the U.S. In the green color, and they all look about the same. Here they look a lot different. This is the percent of startups. And again, you can see it for the US, California, and Santa Barbara, which is blue. We suck. We're not creating new startups. We're as low as we've ever been, and it's flat. So that's another notion, and going back to some of what Dan said, maybe some of it's health related because we have to spend money, whatever. We're just not creating the kind of startups that we'd really like to see. The ones we do create, though, if we look at survival rates, when we do create them, they stick around, more than in California and the US. So our one-year survival rate is pretty high, relative to the US and California. So while we're not creating a lot of startups, we're creating good ones. Maybe. I don't know what it means to be high, but... Here's the 5-year survival rate. So what does this mean? This basically says that in Santa Barbara, we didn't see this long decline like we saw during the Great Recession in the rest of the country. We're still producing sort of fairly robust firms. 5-year survival rates around 50%. Meaning that if you create a firm today, you have a 50% chance of being there in 5 years. That's what I mean about this churning. We're constantly doing this. Job growth is strong in weak sectors in Santa Barbara. This is a picture of the employment growth over the last year. The width of the bar is the size of the employment as a share. So for example, government's our largest employer as a share of employment in Santa Barbara County. And you can see all of the larger sectors grew over the last year in terms of employment. Only some small sectors fell, but information technology, financial activities, those all fell a little bit, but they're very small. So job growth has been pretty robust in Santa Barbara County. So now let me talk about people, and again, Dan mentioned, that people are going to move. They moved to Texas. Turns out Texas has no state income tax. That's another good reason to move there. But let's take a look at how people do move. Those of you that don't know, this is a map of the United States. Those are all counties in the U.S. And what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you the percent change in population density. So this is people per square mile. So what you're going to see is what you probably think you're going to see. The darker blue means increasing population. White, or kind of this pinkish color, which is not showing up very well, means losing population. And now you can see exactly where people have left and where they're moving to. And they're moving where you think. I spent 12 years at the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland. I left. It's really cold and snowy. Detroit is depopulated. Cleveland's depopulated. Back in the 1950s, in fact, if you go to the U.S. Census in 1954, Shaker Heights, Ohio was the richest city in the United States. It was steel, it was tires, it was Rockefeller lives there, etc. Wage growth and income growth was strong back in the 1950s in Cleveland, Ohio. And the county administrators and the politicians, they said, you know what? We're going to be here forever. You know what we're going to do? We're going to build infrastructure, because right now our population is 400,000, but by the year 2000, we're going to be at 1.2 million. That's how we're going to grow. They did. They built freeways. There's no traffic congestion there right now. They built big freeways. And then what happened? The population grew and grew and grew up to about 800,000. Then shrank. Now it's down to about 300,000. So that's the population of Cleveland, and it's still depopulated. Why does anyone live there? Here's an interesting theory. They live there because houses are really durable. What goes on is this. Rich people are there, and now the jobs aren't there. So then they move to, as you can see, Florida, Arizona, Minneapolis for some reason. I don't know, blue up in Minnesota. So they move. Now when the rich person moves and they're depopulating, that means houses become cheaper. So poor people move into nicer houses. And houses last 100 years. In Ohio, they're built with brick and stuff like that. Right? So you can see where the depopulation has occurred. And there's no change in the rate at which this is happening. This is In-N-Out, not In-N-Out Burger, but so who's moving into and out of our county? Well, you can see this is net domestic migration. These are people moving into the United States, into Santa Barbara County, minus the people moving out. And right before the Great Recession, 2005, 6, 7, etc., we had mostly negative net migration. That is, more people left than came in. Over the last few years, it's reversed. We're now getting more people coming into the county, domestically, that is, from other states and counties, than previously. So we can also track them. So there's something called the American Community Survey put out by the U.S. Census. We know who those people are that moved. This is a picture of average household income of movers. What you can see, the green, by the way, are foreign immigrants. That's pretty cool. You can see foreign immigrants, when they're coming into Santa Barbara County, they're typically richer than people coming in domestically. So it's the richer foreign immigrants that are coming into Santa Barbara County. And you can see how that's happened over the years. The blue are people leaving California. Santa Barbara County. The red are people coming in domestically, and then the green are foreign. Once again, look at education. The education level of the foreign immigrants post-college is high. So who's moving in? Well, the foreign people who are moving in have more than a post-college degree. They have PhDs and stuff like that moving into the county. This is the age distribution. Again, the blue is people leaving. The red are domestic immigrants coming into Santa Barbara County. And the green are foreign immigrants. So who are the foreign immigrants coming in? I just told you, they're actually pretty rich. They're young, and they're well educated. That's exactly who's coming into our county. And if you look at who's leaving, and you can look at these graphs later, you can see that 65 and over, in terms of our immigrants, not many people 65 and over moving in, but they are moving out. Okay? So what about income? Turns out in Santa Barbara County, our per capita income has been growing actually very strong, higher than it was back in 2006, 2007, before the Great Recession. And most of it's from net earnings growth, not wage and salaries. So this shows you real per capita income. And again, here the blue is Santa Barbara, the red is California, and green is the United States. And you can see that our per capita income in $2009 has risen faster than California on average and the US since the Great Recession. So we've seen continued increases. And again, we're higher than we were when we thought we were at the peak in 2006, 2007. How is this income broken down? So this is yearly, and what you can see here is that the growth in 2015, what we saw was a decline in this gold color, which is dividends and net interest and rents. The darker blue is net earnings. So this is wages and salaries. And then the light blue are transfer payments, current transfer receipts. So what you can see is we lost a little bit in terms of dividends and interest, but we gained in net earnings, that is wages and salaries. And what's really interesting, I think, is that compared to the rest of the country in California, Santa Barbara County earns its income pretty much differently than other places. This shows you that 29% of per capita income is coming from net interest. Interest, dividends, investments like that. Whereas in the rest of the country, it's like 19%. It's a 10 percentage point difference. So that all comes from, as I said, dividends and interest, people investing in firms, etc. Housing, Dan brought this up, we have to talk about it. The housing market has cooled off in our county, in some places. House price growth has stalled. This is what it looks like. So this is, the blue is Santa Barbara, the red's California, green's United States. And what you can see is that blue line, while it was rising in 2012, 13, 14, it started to that line became a little bit lower. And if you look at the growth, you can see again the blue line growth has really fallen. What that means is house price growth right now is only growing about 3% in Santa Barbara County. And you can see before it was up to as much as 20% before the Great Recession. By the way, 20% house growth year after year is not sustainable. I can just tell you that, it's not going to happen. So when you see that happening, it can go for a while, but it's not going to be there forever. If you look at the rest of the country, California is growing about 7%, so is the U.S. Pretty sustainable numbers overall. Now we can break it down by cities. Green one going above, it's the only city in Santa Barbara County that's above where it was back before the Great Recession. That's Montecito. Still growing like crazy. It's now almost 20% higher than it was at its previous peak. Oops. This is, again, by city. Where's the high growth? Guadalupe. House price growth in Guadalupe, Lompoc, Santa Maria are all high. You look at Carpinteria, it's 0. So those houses aren't growing, but here up in the North County, house prices are still growing pretty rapidly. Which is good if you're living one, but it's bad if you want to buy one, I guess. But it's still not that affordable. And so what do I mean by affordable? Well, the way people think about affordability is how much does the house cost relative to how much income you have. Right? So you want to see how many people can afford to buy a house in a particular place. So this is a picture of affordability, and what this number represents is the percentage of people who can afford the median house, the median price house. And what do you see? Well, the green line, straight line, is the U.S. average. That's 58%. So 58% of the people in the U.S. can afford the median house. California, that number is 31%. And then you can look across the counties, the MSAs in California, and you can see what's affordable and what's not. San Francisco is the least affordable. Then San Mateo County, Santa Cruz, Marin, and then Santa Barbara. What are those numbers? About 20% or less can afford the median house. And that's what we mean by it's too expensive. It's hard for these people to buy houses. And you can see in Kings County, about 60%. So now this is rent as a percent of income. Okay, rent as a percent of income. How much you're spending on rent out of your income. I didn't put anything down on the horizontal axis because it's a little quiz. The counties, just like I did here. Here are the counties, and I'd like you to rank them. Who pays the most rent as a fraction of their income, and who pays the least? The least is San Francisco. Their rents are super high, but they're really rich. Where is it the highest? Look, it's in Butte County, Lake County, Imperial County, etc., where rents are high, relative to their income. They're really poor. Another way to look at this is here's the median rent. So the median rent, and you can see on the left is Santa Clara, San Mateo, Marin, San Francisco, etc. That's the median rent. The lighter blue is Santa Barbara. We're kind of a little bit, up higher in the middle, but there we are. And now I can do the same thing, and I can look at median income. Well, if you look at median income, it's the same counties right on the left that have a lot. Another way to think of this is a picture like this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look at everything compared to the median. So I'm going to look at all the people in these counties and find the median income and then the median rent. And what you see on the far right is that Santa Clara has way above the median rent. So the rents are really, really high. That's the darker blue, but their incomes are even higher at the median. So that means that their rent-to-income ratio is actually lower. And this little red one, it's kind of in the middle, is Santa Barbara. So the problem with Santa Barbara is they have high rents and our incomes are not above the median. So that's why it's not so affordable, because our incomes are not higher than the median. Okay, so this shows you kind of that where it's expensive to live, it's also really rich, typically. But rent as a percent of income, it's in the poorer areas that it's the highest. I want to make a little advertisement now. We usually don't advertise, but we're doing something now that we haven't done in a long time. We're bringing something back. It's called Community Indicators Project. The book you have in front of you is basically about income and employment and business, etc. This is about the health of the community. This is really going to be getting at nonprofits, crime, health, homelessness, etc. So we're just about done with it. This is the front cover. It's going to be. It looks very peaceful, I guess, and nice. So it's coming out soon, and again, it's going to be a companion to this book, but looks slightly different. Nonprofits, by the way, is another way to think about reallocation. What do I mean by that? I mean, nonprofits exist because some people have money that they give to the nonprofit. That's a reallocation of income to things that we like in our community. The arts, health, etc. So what does that look like? Well, it turns out that if you look at the contributions, gifts, grants, etc. in Santa Barbara to nonprofits, you can see that just lately it's been rising. And we're getting close to the $1.2 billion number in terms of contributions. What do they look like in terms of where they come from? Well, the dark blue is government. The light blue is private. And what you can see is all the gains lately comes from the private sector. Government's flat. What can I say? How about the type? Well, this is where the contributions by sector. On the left is the community, sort of this community stuff. Then there's education next. And you can see that government contributions to nonprofit in terms of education is very large. Environment's next. Government gives us nothing for the environment. So when Trump says he doesn't care about the environment, they're already not giving us anything for the environment. So, don't have to worry there. Human services is another one.
It's not contributed, it's spent.
If we look at some local areas and contributions, we're starting to see some really interesting patterns here in North County. Santa Maria has gone up and up and up, and now up to about $48.5 million being contributed in Santa Maria. Lompoc, same story, up, 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 not as much, of course, but rising. Buellton went crazy for some reason. I guess people, I don't know, they want to put a lot of money in Buellton, but San Ynez, same thing. So we're seeing this ramp up in contributions to nonprofits. I'm going to give you one little thing here about nonprofits, though. This is Solvang. We're seeing a decline, and now we've seen an increase coming out of the Great Recession. It was declining. Now we're seeing an increase. I want to do one little thought experiment. Let's just suppose Trump decides to get rid of the corporate income tax altogether. Not down to 15%. Suppose it was 0. What would happen to nonprofits? They'd go away. Altruism wouldn't go away. We'd still be giving, but there would be no corporate advantage to being a nonprofit any longer. So it might change the way we think about things. That's an extreme example. It's not going to go to 0. But we can start to think when people are saying, hey, if Trump reduces the corporate income tax, they'll have more money to give us. Yes, however, they have less reason to because now you don't get such a tax advantage. So that's going to be a quantitative exercise. I don't know how it's going to come out, but altruism is not going to die. That's not what I'm saying. People are still going to give to make the community better, no doubt about it. Anyway, some final thoughts. The world is still awash in uncertainty. The ACA, we don't know what's going to happen through the Senate. We'll talk a little bit about that now. Growth has been strong in the U.S., California and Santa Barbara particularly. Both employment and income have gone up. But there are little signs of weakness out there. And so the Fed is still a little bit concerned that maybe they won't be raising as fast as they had hoped. Anyway, thank you very much. And the panel's next, so stick around.
We have this migration from uninsured into Medicaid that helps soften the pressure to shift that additional loss over to the private sector. So the concern is that if we lose Medicaid expansion and even add to that, potentially lose the federal subsidies for the patients on the exchange through Covered California, that we'll be back where we were, except it would be worse because we don't have the restoration of the Medicare cuts that all hospitals endured.
I see. Anyone else on that one, or?
Yeah, I think it should be noted that overall the ACA is about $20 billion in California. That's what the feds are pumping into time. Most of that is for the Medi-Cal expansion, which is up to about 14 million Californians as of Now, I mean, the total Medi-Cal is up to about 14 million, or well over a third of the state's population. And in some counties, by the way, it gets up to well over 50%, I mean 60 and 70%. Interestingly enough, mostly counties represented by Republican congressmen, such as Tulare, Kern, and places like that.
So, given the expansion, do you see it taxing resources from the hospital side of things? I mean, how hard is it on you when you're getting all these new patients coming in, and or not really new patients coming in, but just different ways they're paying?
It really is just a change in the way they're paying, and as I mentioned, it's been for us. It's been about a financial wash for us. So the challenge for us is in working with our safety net providers to educate the patients and help them shift from the ER back to where they should be receiving care. They can receive better care at our neighborhood clinics and community health centers.
So here's a couple questions. Why don't, it's not quite a sentence, I think, but why isn't there more negotiation with drug companies to lower drug costs?
Well, I think the federal government is prohibited from doing that for Medicare. And that is done at the state level. And the state can potentially negotiate rebates for high-cost drugs. But that's dependent on whether there is a competitive drug that the first drug maker would be afraid of losing the business. When Sovaldi first came out in 2014, there was not a competitive drug, so there were no rebates offered because they didn't need to offer them. When Harvoni came out, all of a sudden rebates were on the table. But even so, if the drug manufacturers are all playing the same or going through the same strategy to a certain extent, they're all very expensive. And how you get them down, I think, that's something that the federal government is the best position to actually affect.
So, some of you showed this, how well we're doing relative to the rest of the world. How about in drug costs relative to, say, Canada or Sweden or whatever? Any sense of that? Are they much lower than here, or no idea?
I'll give one anecdotal response, because when Sovaldi came out, the drug maker was actually pricing it based on the economic strength of each country. And so while they're charging $900 a pill here, again for a 90-pill sequence, they were charging, I believe, 90 cents a pill in Egypt. So half seriously, half not, we actually price it out. Would it be cheaper for us to fly people in Sovaldi to Egypt? It was close.
Yeah. Another question: what's the future of single-payer health care in California?
I'll take that one. As you know, it pops up occasionally in Sacramento, the idea of having a California-only single-payer health care plan. There's legislation moving again this year. It's a kind of a bedrock principle for the Democratic Party, and more so now because in the reaction to Trump and because of the Bernie Sanders influence, the left wing of the Democratic Party in California has now become kind of ascendant, and so they are pushing the issue. Now, the problem, however, always founders on the problem of cost. Where's the money going to come from? And healthcare in California is roughly a $300 billion a year industry. Right now, the government entities pay about 70% of that, and the federal government pays about 50% of that bill. So the idea is if you could take all that money that the feds and the state government and county governments kick into healthcare and tweak that to provide universal single-payer healthcare in California, nobody has ever actually presented a comprehensive financial plan to do that, number one. Number two, and in the process laid out what it would cost in terms of taxes to make up that gap. And there seems to be, while there's a lot of enthusiasm pushed by the nurses union particularly to do that, because they would like to exert their political muscle to get better contracts. So if you had single-payer health insurance, that's the whole story. The more centrist elements of the party, including Jerry Brown, do not seem to be interested in it whatsoever. They say, show me the money. And so far, nobody's shown them the money. So it's kind of a thing that kicks around. It's a shibboleth. It's something that it's a big talking point, but it's not likely to happen in California, even though in theory you could. I actually ran some numbers on it. We actually spend more per capita on healthcare in California than they do in Canada, for example. And Canada is kind of comparable to California. It has about the same population, for example. And so in theory, it could happen. In reality, as a political reality, don't hold your breath. It's probably not going to happen.
Maybe I could just, from the hospital standpoint, well, as we've heard reported, this is really complicated. And so from the hospital standpoint, it goes right back to that cost shift. And so when people ask, are we supportive of single payer, it depends on who that single payer is. So to get from here to there would require a tremendous shift toward increasing the amount that the government-sponsored patients are able to pay. And that $200 million that we cross-subsidize, the question it always raises in my mind, we are unique as a country in having an employer-sponsored model for our private sector. And so it really requires thinking that through as well. Is that the best way to provide health care coverage through employment, or are there alternatives?
I'll just finish up with this. And if you think about single payer in California, I don't know how you do it without the federal government's participation, because as Mr. Walters said, 70% of Medi-Cal is federal government, 100% Medicare, whatever the VA or whatever. So how do you develop a program that either cuts those out or includes them in a way that the federal government would approve of?
The assumption has been that the feds, particularly the feds, would keep on paying what they're paying now, which is about half the bill, the total bill. But can you really, given the atmosphere in Washington, can you really create a single-payer health program for California on the assumption that the feds are going to pay half the bill? And that's kind of a shaky assumption going in. If you reconfigure the whole healthcare system of California based on that assumption, it's a pretty shaky basis when you think about it.
So here's one. I guess it's for me or Dan. As a small business owner, I am concerned about the wage increase, I guess the minimum wage coming up for entrance-level occupational jobs. So so luckily I got to talk to a lot of restaurant owners in town, and all of them told me exactly the same thing, which was, once this starts happening, once the minimum wage goes up another dollar and another dollar, the way that they structured now, there's so many arguments between the front of the house and the back of the house, because the waiters and waitresses are getting $30 an hour, and the back of the house are getting $10.50. And they told me that what's going to happen to the restaurants in Santa Barbara County, and there were a ton of them there, and they were well represented, is that as soon as a waiter or waitress leaves for another job, they're not going to replace them. And at the end of maybe 3 to 5 years, it's mostly going to be counter service. The high-end restaurants will be good, but everyone else is going to be counter service. And there's another question I just want to get to for a second, which is, how about robotics? How's that affecting what's going on? Well, I can tell you, when the minimum wage gets to 15, this is my guess, and I'm going to forecast, you're going to be in your self-driving car, and you're going to say, you know what, I'd really like a Big Mac, some fries, and a shake. And your car is going to know that. It's going to locate the nearest McDonald's. It's going to drive over there. In the meantime, a robot's going to be making the burger. And you're going to drive up, and it's going to reach out a little metal arm and give you your burger. There's not going to be a worker in McDonald's. There's not going to be a worker in any of those places. I think many of you might have seen the new Amazon store. Have you heard about this store that's coming out? No people, no salespeople in the store. What you're going to do is you're going to walk up to the counter, to the shelf. You're going to go, hey, I like that thing, and you walk out. It already knows your credit card. It pays, and you're done. There's not going to be sales clerks or anything like that. So that's what I meant earlier about, how the transformation of jobs is going to happen, and it's coming.
Let me mention one other sector of the economy regarding that, and that's agriculture. I know a lot of farmers. I talk to a lot of farm groups. I get a lot of feedback from them. They're seeing the world right now as a triple or quadruple whammy. They're seeing legislation that tightens up on overtime going through. They're seeing the minimum wage legislation going through. They're seeing new curbs on pumping underground water coming down the pipe under new legislation. And finally, they're seeing water in general becoming more expensive and harder to get. And to one side, they talk about the minimum wage as like the cherry on the top, the last straw, this sort of thing. It's going to, but at the same time, agriculture is seeing labor shortages. There's less migrant labor particularly available for farm work. And so the California farm economy has always been in a state of constant reinvention. You go back into history in the 19th century when they started getting any kind of agriculture here, like I have a cousin who was the largest wheat grower in California back in the 1870s, had 50,000 acres of wheat. They grew wheat. It was very labor intensive. He would hire 900 men at harvest time. And over time, agriculture has evolved from wheat to cotton and vegetables and row crops, and most recently into highly specialized, high-value crops such as grapes and almonds and pistachios. And you will see, as a result of the quadruple whammy that's going on in agriculture right now, another great evolution in agriculture. There will probably be some more shrinkage. There will probably be more specialization. Because of the cost structure, you will probably see a shift more to high-value crops and eliminating the lower-value crops, particularly those that are most labor-intensive. It's going to be another evolutionary factor in agriculture. But in our lifetime, you're going to see agriculture in California is going to be completely different than it probably is today, just as it's completely different today than it was 50 years ago.
You're talking marijuana, aren't you?
Well, that's another whole. I'm talking about high-value crops. The emphasis is, of course, on high.
I think some of you got to this. Is there a difference between health care versus caring for health?
There's a difference between health care and health insurance. And there's a difference between the two. The ACA and all the stuff going on in Washington now is about, as it's been described, financing health care. It has less probably impact on the quality of the care than it does on who pays for it. And eliminating the cost shifts or not eliminating the cost shifts. It's really more of a financial equation than it is maybe a medical care equation. Oh, I'm sure it has some effect on it, but the two are really kind of separate things in a sense.
We spend a lot of time looking at the Community Needs Index that really defines caring for health and understanding the needs for community. That's really what our responsibility is. Healthcare reform, healthcare financing is, just as you said, how it's paid for.
So I want to go back to this robotics thing. So how about, robotic surgeries and stuff? Is that coming along pretty fast, or?
If you have an opportunity or an option to have the most advanced procedure using robotic technology, knowing that's going to give you the best outcome, or the old traditional way, which we did 20 years ago, you're going to choose the most advanced technology. In our communities, in our hospital, we have a responsibility to continue advancing technology and advancing clinical care for our patients. So robotics are not only here to stay, it's going to become part of a much greater part of what we do for healthcare, along with interventional procedures, catheters, and so forth.
And surgeons will drive Uber?
We're still interested in good outcomes.
So, we talked a lot about job destruction and stuff, and I just want to read a little story that one of our speakers on Tuesday talked about. And this is a nice little thought exercise. Suppose one of these lads in the hospital develops a pill, and the pill, and they're really nice people, so they're going to sell it for what it costs, let's say $10. And so the pill, if you take it, you live to be 120, you're never sick, you're never hurt, and on your 120th birthday, you just keel over dead. Who'd like that pill? Anybody here like it? Live to 120. I'll take it. So what's the problem with that? Well, these guys wouldn't have jobs. There would be no doctors, there'd be no nurses, there'd be no jobs in healthcare as you start to make these advances. And then the question is, should a government prevent the pill from being sold because people lose their jobs? By the way, that's the same as international trade and technology. So those things, all of it is tied up, and I really like what Dan said earlier, that most of these things are political issues. We kind of understand the economics, we kind of understand how to get it, but it's tied up in politics, water, etc.
I made a similar, some years ago, just for fun. I totaled up all the money that's spent on crime in California. For police salaries and pensions and courts and lawyers and all the stuff involved in crime. Crime's an industry, It employs a lot of people. And finally came to the conclusion after I put all these things together that if we would ever reach our supposed goal of eliminating crime, we would have a terrible depression. But all these people employed in the business, we're talking burglar alarms, think about it, private security services, locksmiths, everything that you can possibly think of that is connected to crime. And if you eliminate it all, you'll have a huge depression. So we've got, for the economic health of California, encourage your local criminals.
Can I just make a comment back on the caring for health?
Yeah.
Just a quick one, because we tried, as a society, I think we tried to use these healthcare financing methods to inject a sense of accountability into people. And so I think perhaps we've gone too far on that one. It used to have maybe a $20 copay to go to your doctor, which was designed to make you think twice about going, make sure that you needed to do that. And today we have $5,000, $8,000, $10,000 deductibles on plans, which means that we're selling insurance plans to people who can't afford to get sick. And so I had a chance to visit Eastern Europe last year, and so there are 2 Eastern European nations that put into place the equivalent of a €2 copay, and there was a change in government over that. And so I think this notion of personal accountability is an important one, but how we use financing, if you're making $100,000 versus $20,000, is going to be very, very different to the extent that that keeps you away from the system.
Any final thoughts? We have to wrap up pretty soon, but Nate, you want to?
Well, on that point a little bit, it goes back to what you were saying in terms of the money being spent in other places other than healthcare that improves outcomes. And one of your slides dealt with education, high school diplomas, I think Ron as well. And so it's the care of the health, accountability, personal accountability, all those things are important. But the educational aspect is probably a little bit more so, because if we have a society that takes care of itself on a personal level, then a lot of these issues kind of wither away. And then going back to the original discussion that Dan was talking about, as far as it all does come down to politics, and it's not a question, unfortunately, about doing the right thing, but it's a question of ideology and how far I can push my own ideas, whether they're right or wrong. And that's where I think we stand, and that's where we should be fought.
Sure.
I think our future is really going to be based on community partnerships and collaboration of healthcare services, centers, physician partners, and other providers. We are forced, in a good way, to collaborate to identify best practices and opportunities to serve our community, because it's about getting the patient to the right center at the right time to ensure that they have the best outcome they can have. And when medical care is no longer possible, how do we make sure we provide the social services to support the family and patient through the rest of their life?
I'll tag on to what Chuck said, and I think that one of the main things we need to work on, which we've all been talking about, is aligning the financial incentives for healthcare. So the hospital, the payer, the physician are all focused on the outcome of the patient without regard to the individual classification of the pharmacy. And I think that's the key, because to Mr. Work's point about government payers not covering their costs, the more the costs are the less a payer is going to pay. I'm going to avoid going there because that's a high cost. So what we have to do is devise a financing system where the hospital is not penalized for someone not having to go to the hospital. And everybody there has to be a way that we can all just look at the outcome and then hopefully benefit off of the efficiencies that are generated by all working together. A little convoluted, I hope it makes sense.
We're so privileged. We get to work with incredible people, physicians, nurses. You know, most people, when you ask them what they say when they're going to go to a hospital, nobody says, I get to go to the hospital for care. It's, I have to go. We have people, physicians, nurses, technologists coming in every day that choosing to do that because they care so deeply about providing this high-quality care to our community. So all of this conversation about how we finance it is really important, and we're engaged in all of that. But when we meet with our physician leaders and our clinical managers, it's all about patient safety, clinical outcomes, head down, and do the very best we can for our communities.
Dan, any final thoughts?
Well, as somebody has spent 4 days in the hospital about a month ago, I can attest that they do a very nice job of trying to make you comfortable, although it got kind of noisy late at night, and do the job and get you out of there as fast as possible. I mean, it's not a pleasant experience, but you know, it works out. When you got to go, you got to go.
Let's give a big hand to the speakers for coming. And, I want to thank Karen very much for helping put this together. Thank to Susan Yamashiro and Eric Sonquist. They were here, late last night putting everything together. They're fantastic. My graduate students who help at the Forecast Project and undergrad interns. And thank all the sponsors. Anyway, thank you so much for coming.